What is up? Welcome to another episode of Rockets Talk. Got my boy Roosh here. Happy holidays to everybody from us here. And to close out the year, you're going to spend some time talking hoops with two of the, I ain't going to throw myself in there, but I will. Two of the best on Talking Rockets Ball. But what's good with you, bro?
Wait, I'm chilling. Christmas is it's my favorite thing in the world. The holiday is my favorite thing in the world. If you need anything from me ever, find me around Christmas. It just brings out the jolly. I'm just happy, man. It's good. I love it.
The Mr. Roosh, like Mr. Scrooge. This is after at the end of the story. I was making a joke. We was on Spaces last night, and we were going in on the Rockets all negative, and here comes Roosh, Mr. Lollipops and Candy on the space. I'm like, bro, come on, bro. I thought you was about to, get in here with us. Nah, he didn't had a whole turn of heart. But life does that to you, right? But nah, you're right.
Hey, and look, and we can dive right into it. But I mean, I'm very pleased so far with the season. So I'm trying to keep perspective. I know It's easy to get caught up in the micro, but when you zoom out and look at the macro, I mean, like I was saying it last night on that space, we don't belong here, but we are here. We're out kicking our coverage so far, and we can get into it. But so I'm happy, man. I mean, obviously there's some disappointments. There's some things I would change if I could, but holistically, comprehensively, I'm pretty pleased so far.
No, definitely, and I always preach the macro, micro. I think there is a kind of a medium view of things that I've seen with the team, which would fall into late game situations. And we saw it rear its ugly head last night versus the Miami Heat. We saw it against Minnesota. We saw it a little earlier than late game against OKC. Almost fumbled it against the Warriors. Almost fumbled it against the Thunder. Earlier, and Milwaukee, we fumbled it there. So I think there has been a pattern for late game letdowns from our team, and the Miami Heat. And to me, it's just the teams that are really good. And what I've seen from last night is the same thing. Teams really switch up and tighten down on defense, and the Rockets can't shoot. And I think it got really ugly last night. It led to the Amen Thompson body slamming Tyler Hero after Low-key, Amen was getting cooked, bro. I'm not going to lie. Leading up to that, he was getting cooked. And I think the frustrations led over to that, and it spilled over into that. But what was your overall take from that game?
So real quick about Amen. That was the first time that I've watched him play defense and thought, oh, man, he's having trouble. Like Hero was getting him with the pump fakes, with hezzies, with crosses. I mean, everything. His timing. Amen could not read his timing throughout the game. And even when he did, Hero would make a tough shot, or Miami would get the offensive rebound and reset the possession. Like there was rarely a moment where Amen Thompson, won defensively. I think he did swat someone off the backboard, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, my takeaway from the game is that kind of like you said, good teams can get the best of us, right? I already knew coming in. I saw the line. I was like, I'm pissed at myself. I should have bet. The money line on Miami was like plus 250 or something crazy. And I was like, man, Eric Spoelstra is going to be ready, right? And sure enough, he was. They'll blitz the ball handler, or they'll cheat off that wing three. You probably heard the broadcast talking about it. They will give up that wing three, which is one of the toughest shots to hit. I guess statistically, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the theory is. And obviously, we don't have guys who can shoot that well, so that's the shot you want to give up. But man, it's just this team is offensively deficient. I mean, Dylan Brooks got us back into the game in the third quarter, and then Jalen Green went off in the third quarter. And there's so many different angles we can talk about. I'll throw some broad topics out there, and you can tell us where you want to go, and we could take whatever direction we want. But Şengün was working, and they didn't ride that the way that they should have, and then he fizzled out. Jalen Green, bad 3 quarters. He had a good third quarter. He was bad otherwise, which to me just kind of continues the theme of microwave scoring. It's like you're going to get one hot quarter, and then the rest of it's just really not that good. Jabari Smith had a really bad game. It was not talked about that much. He had a really bad game, and he didn't play that much as a result of it. Aaron Holiday I think, has replaced Reed Sheppard in the rotation, although he's not really making the most of that opportunity so far. Steven Adams looked good. Steven Adams looked bad. He did some good things on the glass. He looked absolutely toast in pick and roll coverage. Anytime he has to get on the perimeter to do anything, it's a problem. And then Fred VanVleet, I mean, he hit some big shots in that fourth quarter, right? He hit those back-to-back threes to put the Rockets up 90, I think 83, 90, 84. And then fizzled out after that. But yeah, overall, it was just one of those games where you see the holes on this team, but you also see how they can beat anybody. And more so than anything, they just beat themselves, right? So, and also, Şengün outplayed Bam Adebayo. I posted a graphic. I was just messing around, and I saw I was on Basketball Reference, and I was just looking at the matchup beforehand, and I thought, let me see how Şengün stacks up against Bam. And I just looked at the comparison real quick, and I was surprised. I was like, whoa. I mean, that's a 5-time All-Star, it's not a 3-time All-Star, I think 5-time All-Defense, Defensive Player of the Year candidate. And Şengün, and people don't know this, by the way, Bam Adebayo doesn't really block shots. Go look at his blocks per game. He's not a shot blocker. He might alter shots, but he's not a shot blocker. Şengün's actually, I think, statistically been a better shot blocker than Bam in Şengün's limited career so far. But yeah, those are kind of a mix of talking points. So
yeah. I mean, those are all, and that'll lead me. One of the things we're gonna do is, we're gonna do a kind of a hot topic to end the year, since it is the end of the year. You guys are listening to this on New Year's Eve. What are some key things that we're going to close out the year as high priorities for the Rockets? And I think what you introduced kind of leads into that, honestly, with the clutch play from the Rockets. I think, and clutch, the way NBA.com defines it, is the last 5 minutes, and they have multiple definitions. Do not use the last 5 minutes of a game in the fourth quarter with 5 points ahead or behind. So the game is within 5 points, 5 minutes. If you guys know for a fact, this is when everybody's brain turns to mush for the Rockets. And if you look at the stats, to your point about the shooting is terrible. Brother, if I told you that your starting backcourt have a true shooting percentage, Fred VanVleet's true shooting percentage in clutch moments is 38%, bro.
Oy, that's bad.
38%. Jalen's is better at 52%. Jalen's EFG is 39%. Fred's is 31%.
So that means that
Go ahead.
Jalen can get to the line.
Yes,
But
he's hitting his free throws. Yep. And Fred is not
exactly.
even hitting those. Yeah.
Well, no,
So,
Fred's not even getting to the line. Probably Jalen's
and when
getting
he
to the
gets there, he
line.
probably misses a couple. And I've seen him miss a couple.
Yeah.
To me, the problem, and I talked about this, if you guys have already watched the video I dropped yesterday, the problem is that with our backcourt, they have similar issues. And this to me is going to be the hot topic issue to close out this year and going into next year, is the backcourt. We have a alarming issue with both of our backcourt. It used to be just Jalen. Now it is Fred. And Fred he's been not great for the whole year, for the whole season so far. Especially late in the game, because what you require late in the game when the defense tighten up and they start cheating. For example, in the Minnesota game, they allow Şengün to play with a single coverage on defense against whoever their big was, pretty much for about 3.5 quarters. And then their coach made the adjustment to start sending help late in the game. And once they did that and switched that up, it threw off everything the Rockets are doing. Our offense just instantly died. Because when you send help and you trap, what it begs to do is for those guards to make a play, right? You're either going to make a play by having an open shot to hit, they're not shooting good, or you're going to make a play by finding a teammate, by reading the defense, which they don't do well. And for both of them, I think Fred's limitations as a facilitator shows up late in games, that he thinks that a lot of the times he has to take shots, whereas by him getting the ball to Şengün forcing double team, him getting a kick out is an opportunity for him to can't drive, and then kick out to a scrambling defense. So that's there. And for Jalen, he can drive. The problem is he doesn't know how to pass. So it's like he's either going to take a shot on a kick out or drive and miss a shot, or if you're lucky, he's going to make it. So we're just kind of incredibly limited, and they're almost redundant in their weaknesses, kind of in different ways, and it really does not help the team. And you look at Şengün's EFG is 41%, and so your best offense in the clutch, bro, 41%, 41%. But a team high, starter high plus 11, while Fred is a -2 and Jalen is a +4. So Şengün is a net positive, because if you look at the assist percent, I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. I'll put a graphic up for this. Şengün's assist percentage in the clutch is 30%. That means that for all his passes, that is elite.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
That's an offensive engine. our starting point guards assist percentage is 17.8%, which is a role player level, and Jalen's is 19. Anything below 20% is way below average for a ball handler, way below average. So, like Harden is in the mid 30s on his best years. He's in the mid 30s doing that. So the facilitation, Şengün is not making shots. He's seeing a lot of bodies. He's probably fatigued. He's missing a lot. So that forces, and I saw this in Miami, bro. Like, they were sending so many players at him to end the game. The dude looked damn near dead tired. And you kick it back out to the perimeter, and it's like somebody, anything. Like there's nothing there. So it's a bad, like, the interior is being worked and he's running out of gas, and then there's nothing happening on there. So it's, to me, this is one of the main reasons the Rockets are losing all these close games. Our offense is just non-existent, and to me, it's going to be a big issue going forward for the team.
You know, I was at the Minnesota game, and I had good seats, so I could see like up close and see how they interacted with each other and read body language and things like that. Um, I came away with the impression that Fred is desperate for somebody to take the ball, desperate for someone he can trust. Right? I don't think we talk about this enough. Everyone gets focused on the result, the output. Trust is a big thing, right? If you remember, and I'm an old head, so I don't care. The big knock on Mike Jordan used to be he doesn't trust his teammates. He tries to do it all himself. It wasn't until Pippen came around that he had someone he could trust. And also, it wasn't until Phil Jackson became the head coach and supplanted Doug Collins that they ran the triangle, and like MJ, started trusting, started relinquishing the ball and just trusting his teammates. And he had the teammates that could make it work. Okay, that's why it worked. A big thing of basketball is trust. When you don't trust your teammates, it can lead to bad decisions because it's very difficult to do everything on your own, especially if you're not even the kind of guy that can do anything on your own, like Fred VanVleet, right? We saw James Harden before he had trust in his teammates. We saw James Harden gain and lose trust in a variety of different, high-profile teammates over the course of 8, 9 seasons, whatever it was in Houston, right? And Fred VanVleet, when I'm watching him, he just doesn't trust anybody. Like, he's going around on the perimeter. There were moments where he could pass it to Cam, and he's looking at Cam, and he just looks it off like, no, that's not the read. There's moments where he's looking for Jalen. Jalen's not in the right position. He's like, no, that's not the read. And he's crossing, he's pointing, he's waving. But then before you know it, there's 5 seconds left and he's like, shit, I got to do something. Now there's times where he misses Şengün, or the answer is, hey, just post up Şengün because that's the best thing we got. That's the best option we got. And he doesn't do it. So it's not like he's perfect. He makes mistakes. But that lack of trust stems from, man, there's nobody out there that can do it. And as problematic as Fred's play has been at times, especially his shooting and his inability to be efficient, he is the most decorated player just from a resume, achievement, accolade standpoint. He is the most decorated player on this roster. And that matters. You can say, oh, I don't care. But that matters when you're sizing up everyone and you're like, all right, who's the guy to take the shot? Who can I just like defer to? If you notice, he defers to Dillon Brooks quite a bit. He trusts Dillon Brooks. Yeah. He trusts Şengün. He really doesn't trust anyone else. He tries to trust Jalen, and it just kind of doesn't work. So I feel bad for him in that regard. It's not going to excuse his poor shooting, but I do feel bad for him in that regard. But to your point, Fred can't create separation off the dribble, right? All of his shots are very difficult. He's stepping into threes off a screen with, not that much room. Very rarely does he get a clean look. If he does get a clean look, it's because he's like 4 feet behind the 3-point line, right? And those are difficult shots to hit. He's hit them before, but without taking a dribble to step into that kind of shot, if you're Fred VanVleet and you're 34 feet from the rim, that's just a hard shot, period. Doesn't matter who you are. He doesn't create separation. Jalen can create the separation, but to your point, he can't make the read, or he can't make the midi, right? Like that midi is there for him all day. When he first came into the Rockets, I thought he was going to kill it from the mid-range. But no, he cannot shoot that shot with any type of efficiency. He was 1 of 8 in the first half. And then he finished the game, I think, 6 of, what did he finish the game? 6 of 20? Let me see real quick.
Yeah, I didn't.
He finished the game 6 of 20. Yeah. So he was 5 of 12 in the second half. And that's him getting hot in the third quarter. He still finished 5 of 12, which is fine, but 19 points on 20 shots. So there's just, in the clutch, we have no advantage. We have nobody to create an advantage. The one guy that we have is Şengün. He gets doubled, and that's the recipe. When you double him, Lord knows what's going to happen. I've heard a variety of things from fans. Oh, give Cam Whitmore a shot. Yeah, okay. Cam Whitmore does his little step back, and a lot of times he bricks it. Jabari, okay, maybe you run designed action for Jabari, but you have to ask yourself, How many plays do the Rockets have to get Jabari open? Because Jabari cannot get himself open, right? So if they're not going to use Jabari, which this is a criticism I do have, is that they should use Jabari off the ball because he can't get himself open, but he can shoot off movement. But how many plays do they have schemed up to go get Jabari that shot, right? How many times has Jabari done that? He's hit some big shots as a Rocket, kind of, but Jalen, we've seen Jalen, right? Like his clutch plays, okay, he had the hustle play against OKC, but that was him diving on the floor. That was not him, creating offense, right? Who else is in the starting lineup? Dylan Brooks. You really want Dylan Brooks creating in the clutch? I don't. I mean, he seems to be one of our more clutch players, but
yeah, I mean,
that's
as far as outlet shooting, yes, EFG is 50%, 56% true shooting, but pretty much non-existent on any type of self-creation statistics. Like he's not. If you give Dylan the ball, he's going to take the shot. Like that's pretty much right.
Cannot do it. And so this is what I was talking about last night in the space. We don't have a top 50 guard. We don't. Right? Maybe Fred VanVleet, or a top 50 like wing player. Maybe Fred VanVleet measures on like a statistic or something. But I mean, I'm talking like, or actually, sorry, we don't have a top 50 player that is a wing or a guard. So if you stacked up the top 50 point guards or wings, okay, maybe Fred or whoever would be in there. But top 50 player who is also a wing or a guard. And maybe Fred registers on those metrics, but eye test tells us like, man, he's not going to go get you a bucket when you need a bucket, right? So we're doing this with a bunch of guys that cannot create separation, or the guys who can create separation, Jalen Green, also Amen Thompson, they can't shoot, right? This is where losing Tari Eason hurts a lot because he can create something out of nothing, right? Off the glass, just off the hustle. Sometimes he just puts his head down and gets to the basket on accident, right? But that's what you're watching. You're watching a team of subpar, below average offensive players that is overachieving. And so, I hear people complaining about Ime Udoka, and yeah, we can have our complaints, sure. But guys, this team doesn't have the goods to get there, and somehow they've made us believe, they're outkicking their coverage. So that's kind of my takeaway. Now, it could, and this is my thing, my storyline for the 2025 season, for the rest of this 2025 season, is that the Rockets seem ripe to come back down to earth. Amen Thompson's going to get suspended, most likely, right? Jalen's going to get suspended, most likely. I don't think Fred will, but he might. Ime Udoka might get suspended. Who knows? Tari Eason is still out, which is probably underrated storyline, by the way. 6-7 games in a row off of a leg injury that needed surgery. That is scary. Hopefully it's nothing, but we'll see. So, and then the schedule, they've had the easiest schedule up to this point, and they've got one of the hardest schedules from here on out. So I think they are ripe to come back down to earth, and I think it's going to upset some people. But again, my advice is to focus on the macro, and I can confirm and tell you that the Rockets are definitely focused on the macro. So,
yeah, I mean, to your point, Tari Eason has the highest net rating in the clutch at plus 15 for the team. I think, yeah, he is missed because he stretches the floor. One of the worst net ratings is Amen Thompson. And I think at minus 19.5. Amen is, if you think about that mini game, last second where we're trying to run that offense, Amen's player was in the paint with Jabari's player, and they just clogging up the paint, and they can afford to do that with the limitations of our facility. If I'm a coach, I know that our guards aren't going to pass. And to me, it's like what teams are doing, they're blitzing the guards, forcing the ball out of their hands, not out of respect for their offensive game, but basically saying that we want you because we know you're not going to punish this look. Give the ball to Şengün. We're going to wall the paint up against Şengün, and he's just going to see three bodies and good luck shooting. And that has worked really well for coaches. Like that's really easy for us to read. I think that with the Ime thing, it's to me it's nuance. I think Ime has a level of like he has done almost a miracle turning the Rockets around. But I think as time progresses forward, the expectations of the team, it's going to kind of what we were and those standards are going to start fading away more, and there's going to be new set expectations. Is that time now? No, I don't think so. I agree with you. I think in the macro, the Rockets have really overachieved. I think potentially to the point where I've even asked, we might be low key on fraud alert, and we'll see. We'll see when. We'll see in this next half of the season, but I think we've overachieved where we are. I think the players are progressing, but my biggest issue with Ime is that even within that whole dynamic of him doing what he did, the miracles, blah, 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 I think there's still a lot of room for some base improvements on offense. Like if he with the problems that we have, like offensively, mainly offensively, and if there was a little more, to your point, how do we get Jabari Smith the ball more? If there was a little more philosophy behind his offense, and you could also teach certain principles that you build up upon as time goes on. The way I read it right now, his main offense, and this is kind of checks out the same from Boston, is to find and isolate mismatches and try to attack them. Now, that is all well and dandy, and that is a very efficient modern NBA perspective of offense. And low-key, Mike D'Antoni did the same thing, right? It looked ugly. It's like, man, this is not the beautiful game, but that is the most modern version of offense. The problem is that we don't have the horses to run that race. And the question then comes in for me, to your point about going forward and the Rockets' macro view, is I know they know some of this already, is like, how do you fix it, right? Is it that you're going to keep being patient and waiting on internal development from players, or do you just go get the horses that can run the race? And I think that's really where my mind goes. I'm probably leaning towards, I feel like they're going to go get horses, because I don't see Ime like overhauling the offense for the sake of, oh, I got to get Jabari a shot, or we really got to get Fred in the future over the next few years, or Jalen over the next few years. Now, personally, I think there's a halfway point they can do it, but I just feel like they're just going to end up making moves to get those horses. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've resigned myself. I feel pretty confident in making an educated kind of, I guess, statement or guess that they're not going to do anything crazy this season, right? I think that they're going to make an effort to use their expiring contracts and their non-guaranteed contracts at the deadline to do something. No guarantees it happens, but I think that's the avenue they will explore. But Jalen Green's going to be here, I think, for the rest of the season. Fred VanVleet's not going anywhere this season, at least. We'll see what they do with his team option, if they restructure that or whatever. Şengün clearly not going anywhere this season, right? So like the fundamental components are in place, and they are what they are. So we got to get used to that, right? I think that there is value. I think they've been clever about stacking up some salary. Steven Adams, 12 million. Jeff Green, I think 8 million. Jock Landale, Adams is expiring. Jeff Green is expiring. Jock Landale, I think around 8 million, non-guaranteed, so can be treated like an expiring. I think Jayshawn Tate around 7 million expiring. That's like 35 million right there, I think, right? Yeah. Aaron Holiday has a team option for 4 or 5 million, something like that, right? You can stack up about $40 million worth of salary, which can go get you somebody like Zach LaVine, for example, right? Maybe a low risk type move. So, and you add a pick or whatever. So something like that could work. You give a team salary relief, you give them a pick, you try to pick up someone that can contribute. But I don't think they're going to, they're not going out and getting Giannis, who's obviously not even available, but De'Aaron Fox, Devin Booker. Like, I just don't think they're in a position to make these moves. And I also think that the right move for them is going to take some time, because I think ideally that right move might be Phoenix at some point, right? Because they've got KD and they've got Devin Booker. And if they crash and burn, they're probably going to start selling players off. And you want to try to pick up some value in a trade like that. So that's what I think they're going to do. And you got to give Ime Udoka some credit, by the way. Like, Ime Udoka wants to win. That man came from a finals appearance in his first season, right? He just watched his former team win the championship without him, with what he built. Okay. That's got to be like devastating. I'm fairly certain that Derek White was like him, a lot hard, significantly driven by Ime, the acquisition of Derek White. And the acquisition of Derek White is really what put the Celtics over the top, from being kind of this middling, is Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum going to work, to, oh shit, they got something. His assistants, right? Will Hardy went to Utah. Joe Mazzulla stayed. I think there was one more that he lost. He's got a new bench of assistants, right? We lost someone from last season, Chaco Splitter. You know what I mean? Like, so like
one of his assistants over in, I think, Brooklyn's coach, right, is a former Ime assistant as well.
Jordy Fernandez or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Either Brooklyn or Charlotte. Charlotte. I'm tripping. Charlotte.
Okay. So like, there's been a lot of turnover in his staff, right? And he's still, I think people forget, he's only in his third season as a head coach. Been a ton of turnover. He went from a roster that was one player away from contending to a total rebuild, right? Like, there's still a lot of room for growth for him, and he does need some improvement. But to your point, his approach is the modern NBA approach, right? Now, this team just so happens to have Alperen Şengün, who needs someone from like the Mike Malone, Rick Adelman type tree, which no coincidence that Mike Malone has Rick Adelman's son as one of his assistants on that bench in Denver. So, but that's like a short tree. There's not a lot of NBA coaches that do that kind of offense, right? So we just got to be a little realistic. I also want to point out when we talk about Fred versus Jalen Green, the backcourt, right? Because those are the guys initiating most of the offense when it doesn't run through Şengün. For all of his flaws, people forget that Fred VanVleet still dishes 6 dimes a game, and he only turns it over 1.5 times a game. So basically, for every single game, he pretty much averages literally 4 assists exactly to 1.5 turnovers to 1 turnover per game, 4 to 1. Jalen is averaging 2.6 assists per game and 2.5 turnovers per game. Okay. You go look at any of the guys that we've compared Jalen to, Devin Booker, Ant Edwards, probably even Zach LaVine, even a guy like Malik Monk. They're averaging 4+ assists a game, right? Devin Booker will give you 5 or 6. Like there's a level of creation that Jalen is not achieving. And last night someone was talking about, well, he's got to be used like a point guard or whatever. I just think sometimes people have a disconnect from reality for potential and what you think you could do if you were using Jalen Green, like in NBA 2K, for example, versus the reality of the product that you get on the court. He's a scorer. He's a score first guy. He's a shoot first guy, and that's fine. But expecting him to come out there and make these reads that he's had 4 seasons to show and prove that he's still not making, like that's where you got to really start reevaluating your expectations, right? We're talking simple skip passes that just haven't been happening. It's not that hard. If you draw attention, it's not that hard to make an assist. And he hasn't been able to do it. So for all of Fred VanVleet's inefficiency, which is, I agree, it's been bad, there is still a value that he brings as a table setter. But he just needs someone that can take the ball that he can trust so he can take a step back because he's obviously in that position,
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that to me, once again, Ime gets a lot of credit. I think what we're going to see in the next few seasons is what his upper limits as a coach are, because I think that if you are, because you can commend him for having that modern approach. I think sometimes not being flexible with your players it will get you in the highest moments. I saw it happen when he went to the finals, but he's in the finals. So it's like, well, that's a good problem to have. That's a rich person problem. But we'll see. I still think there's a lot of, like you said, he is a young coach. I value the coaches that are able to adjust their coaching style to the players they have, the SPOs, but that's like the top 1% of the NBA coaches. Like those guys are once in a life. Spo might be one of the greatest coaches in NBA history. Like while we're playing, so he's up there. So I'll give him. Obviously, there's people that call him for Ime to be fired, which is just silly to
that's
me.
Yeah, just to be clear, I agree with you. I would like to see him be flexible. If I'm him, I'm sitting there like, okay, how do I adapt what I do to make Şengün front and center and to make this thing work and overcome the disadvantages that we have? So I agree. But I'm just pointing out, like when people say things like, oh, we should find a new coach, or how long is Ime going to be in Houston or whatever, it just sounds crazy to me because it's
it really does.
Like 9.9 out of 10 coaches are very rigid for the most part, and they do what they think works. Mike D'Antoni, by the way, yeah. Steve Kerr, right? Steve Kerr makes people adapt to him, not really the other way around. Anyways, so just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I think for your point about going forward in the season, right now, where we stand, I think the difference between the 3rd seed and the 7th or 8th seed is like 3 games. And so this coming stretch of games, I think, is going to be very important without all our players. If we can squeeze out like 2 wins, I think over the next 3 or 4 games, that'll be a huge win for the Rockets, because if they go on a losing streak and we get to the point where we're like a 6 seed and we're a 7 seed, and last year the fatigue for this team really set in around January and
around this time,
and we weren't even shooting as bad at this point. We're shooting worse right now than we were at this point last year. The shooting got horrible in January, but so it's really on the razor's edge for where this team could go. I still feel like there has been improvement from a lot of the players, even though it goes unnoticed for some of them. I think Jabari Smith Jr., his play of recent has been really, really, really good. Even though he struggles in certain aspects of the game still, the fact that he is able to Like you said, come off of those screens, make shots, do all those defensively rotations, which is one of the weaknesses he has was just team defense. His point of attack defense hasn't always been like just great. His biggest weakness though has been on the team. He's like weak side shot blocking. The resurgence of Cam Whitmore being playable in the rotation, I think, is going to help. And I really expect a lot of these younger players to kind of do some carrying going down the stretch. And this leads me to a point I'm going to make about, because I had said this on the last video I made. With the Jalen and Fred thing, I think that for the macro view for the Rockets, they still have a decision to make about. And this, to me, if Fred and Jalen are, let's say they sustain being this bad for the rest of the season, at some point, to me, like there is some lineups where Jalen without Fred VanVleet is actually a better player. And I think the reason that is because they occupy the same space when it comes to just playing in the backcourt. Good or bad, it's like they're redundant in a lot of their weaknesses. They also do the same thing. And if Jalen is on ball, what you're going to lose is what you described. You're going to lose facilitation for the rest of the team. And I think you talked about this in the spaces yesterday. When he scores, it's like it is almost in a vacuum. So you live or die by his efficiency for that specific game. If Jalen is highly efficient and everything is humming for him, then you're going to be an efficient team. If he's not, then you suck. Like if you're going to put the ball in his hands, that's basically what it comes down to. With Fred, he's going to facilitate the offense until the going gets tough, and then it starts looking. To me, like I would want to see them experiment really trying to switch some of those roles, because I know they try to get Jalen going in the middle of the game in the third quarters. I'd like to see him be kind of being forced into being the closer, because as it stands right now, nothing is working. Neither one for the reasons we've explained. I'd like to see let's live or die by Jalen, because to me, living or dying by Jalen. Go ahead. In the closing. I'm talking about in the closing as the guard, as the point guard, not just for all shots. Meaning him and Şengün run the two-man, let him facilitate. Let's see if he can get to the rim and draw a foul. And to me, the net difference between the deficiencies from Fred and the deficiencies from Jalen, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I think is a net positive on Jalen in those closing moments, because he has athletic ability that you need, that God-given leveled in those moments the defense is that tight. So that's what I would like to see if going forward. Let's rip the Band-Aid off and just see if at least he can do that.
So I don't disagree with you, right? Because we know what Fred is. Jalen still has like a little, some potential to fulfill if he can hit it, right? There's still a ceiling that's higher for Jalen, obviously, than there is for Fred. It's all theoretical. But the issue is that Jalen's possessions, like you just mentioned, they end in Jalen shots, like there's a reason that when he has the ball, other people aren't getting shots. It's usually him. If someone else does get a shot, it's like maybe a very simple kick out, but it doesn't happen that often. There's no advanced creation. It's just a lot of like, I wish someone would go, and maybe there's a stat that someone could pull from one of the, statistic websites or whatever. He dribbles a lot, right? So he wastes, and so does Fred. But at least Fred can occasionally make that pass to get someone a shot. Jalen dribbles a lot. He'll take the screen, he'll go to the next level, and then he'll pull it back, and he'll keep dribbling. And then he'll take the screen, and he'll go to the next level, and then boom, he'll go to the basket, or he'll step back and hit the midi. But his possessions end in him doing something, right? That's why he's got the highest usage on the team. So that is my concern. Because you give him the ball more, okay, he shoots a lot. He's just going to take more shots. If there was some evidence of like, yo, this dude can create and execute the pass and actually like finish the playoff for somebody else and make other people better, yes, lean all the way in. I'm hesitant.
Nope.
Yeah.
Now, let me clear. So I'm talking about in the clutch, like closing the games. If you look at the numbers, him and the only, I guess the main argument is the assist to turnover ratio. Fred is like 4.0, like that's, which is super elite in the clutch still. The problem is Fred isn't assisting. So he's basically just holding the ball and taking bad shots. And so, which in theory, I guess that is, it looks more desirable. The reason I want to rip the Band-Aid off is because I actually feel like given enough of those reps, you can build some simple things or simple habits between Jalen and Şengün. Because if I'm running a pick and roll with Jalen Green, and let's say the defense starts blitzing him, I think Ime and the coaching staff should be able to coach. Okay, let's get out the blitz doing this, right? If the team does play it straight up, the fact that Jalen is a potential rim threat opens up free throw drawing. It opens up,
Yep.
him making a free throw layup. I mean, you just pray he can shoot on that night, and he still makes the pocket pass. He can make the pocket pass to Şengün. Now, this is all a lot of assumptions. I know this. I'm not saying that there's like over. To me, they're both pretty bad right now. And the rest of the game, Fred blows Jalen out the water. Like it's not even close. But in the clutch, for the reasons we've mentioned, I feel like because Jalen has an extra bit of, and this is just for this season. Like, if they get a better ball handler, then all this is moot. But for this season, I think in those moments, I would rather have the ball in my two highest upside players. And you have the benefit, even though he might not pass it, of having Fred off ball in those moments as an outlet valve and spacer for that. I just feel like Ime is so reliant on Fred VanVleet's ball protection, which makes sense. You don't want to turn it over. That it's like we're spinning our wheels here. And if I've seen that, like I said, the assist percentages, Jalen has slightly better, but he turns the ball over more. He's a better shooter in those moments. I think just off of God-given ability, you have better defenders in those moments. I just if it keeps going down this trend, maybe Fred shakes back and he just comes back to normal, then all this doesn't matter. If this is where we are, then give me at least the guys that I know, like you said. If they don't trade Jalen, he's going to be here more likely than Fred is 2 years from now, because of his contract and because of what he is. If they don't trade him, so if he's not going to be our get us to the guy, at least develop some closer in him. We've seen him make some shots, maybe not this season, in the past. That's just my point. I just think that it's just kind of like in between right now. I just don't see the upside in Fred because he's not really doing anything.
I mean, I agree with everything you just said. The theoretical value is Jalen's more athletic, so he can get a shot off. He can probably get a better, cleaner shot off. He can get to the rim. Maybe he gets fouled. He can get above the rim. Maybe he has a better chance to finish a layup or a dunk. It puts Fred off the ball, so now Fred can just catch and shoot, maybe, right? Which is what he did against Minnesota. He missed a shot. I'm okay with it. I think Jayshawn Tate should have been taken off the floor.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah,
you should have called a timeout, taking Tate off the floor. But
wait, hold on, real quick. That lineup was Amen and Tate, right?
I think it was, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it was Fred, Şengün, Jalen, Amen, Tate, but I'm not sure.
Ooh, give Ime the turban. Got to make a graphic Ime turban for that one.
but even then, Fred. I mean, Şengün got the double. Fred still had a good look. Right. Tate's guy was like sagging over, so he was basically cutting off any type of penetration that Fred could have had. Pause. But Fred still got the shot off, and so, but he missed it, right? But anyways, the issue is that, and again, let me be clear. I agree with you. Like, we might as well see it because we know Fred's low ceiling in that role. We might as well rip the Band-Aid off, see what's going to happen. There are theoretical upsides to it. My prediction, though, is that it ends with Jalen shooting, and you just live or die with him making the shot. He's hit some clutch shots before, kind of, I guess. There's been moments for the Rockets. So maybe he's just got that in him. Let's find out. But that's the issue. I would love it way more if he could create, draw attention, and find somebody for an easy open look or a clean open look.
Man, he made that one pass, bro. Sorry to interrupt you. You know the pass I'm talking about? I think it was in the Minnesota game where he got in.
Behind the back.
Was that the one? Then he swung it to the opposite corner for a three?
I think it was Cam or someone, yeah.
And I said we might never see that again.
Yeah, it wasn't Minnesota. Who was before Minnesota? It was I think it was hold on.
Oh, the Pelicans game. It might have. I think it was the Pels.
It was the Pelicans, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, that was against a
bad
defense.
Team. It's
always
bad
defense.
Bad
team, you know.
Bad defense.
But yeah, it was a sick move. He split the double, or he split the help behind the back, and then he found the kick over to the corner. But how many times have we seen him do that? So rare.
Yeah.
Right? It's just so rare that it happens. Like, the only reason he made that pass was because when he went behind his back, he came back to the ball and he saw it. Right? So it was in front of him. And that's the issue. He doesn't make passes out of his peripheral. He doesn't have that kind of vision, right? And I'm not saying like, oh, you got to have like elite point guard vision, but like, he doesn't have A, the vision, and B, the processing in real time to hit that gap and realize, okay, help's coming from this corner. As soon as this guy steps, I'm passing it. Or, hey, I made this move. I see this dude sagging. Let me take one more dribble. When he takes another step in, I'm going to rise up. And if he's in and I don't have a clean look, I'm kicking it. And, like, he doesn't have that. If he did have that, we'd be talking about a totally different player. We'd be talking about a guy who's probably averaging 4.3 assists a game, who's more efficient because he's taking less bad shots and he's finding more open guys, something like that. He just hasn't shown that. And it's kind of laughable to me when people talk about that 10-game stretch from last season. Like, yeah, bro, he went crazy. It was awesome, but it was 10 games. It was against the Spurs twice, the Wizards, the Jazz, like even OKC didn't have Shea or Chet. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
It's just so cherry picked that it's like, yeah, it was awesome, but how can we take that and act like there's more there when we have however many games, 100-something games, 200-something games of something totally different. So, and also let me point out, January, here's where it gets scary. 10 out of the 15 games scheduled in January are against the Grizzlies, the Celtics, the Lakers, the Nuggets, and the Mavs and the Cavs. So they play the Grizzlies 3 times. They play the Celtics 2 times. They play the Cavaliers 2 times. That's 7 games against Cleveland, Boston, and Memphis, who are top 4 teams in the NBA right now. Then one against LA, one against Denver, and one against Dallas. Now, Dallas is next. I don't know if Luke is still out. Maybe he is.
Yeah, he is. He's going to be out for a while.
Okay, so they'll catch a break there. But after that, it gets scary. So people need to buckle up because it might get ugly.
So what is your prediction on this before the All-Star break? How many where do you not I'm not going to say game like their wins, but where do you think in the rankings, what seed do you think the Rockets finish out at the All-Star break with?
I think they're going to people won't like this, but I think they're going to fall down to 6 or 7. Because they're only 2.5 games ahead of 6. That's it. They're only 3 games ahead of 7. They're only 3.5 games ahead of 8, right? Like that's just not a lot of separation. And Minnesota's in 8th. And Minnesota is 6-4 in their last 10, 3 in a row. Maybe they're onto something. So I think we're gonna. It's funny how similar it is to last season. Literally around the same time, injuries happen, and I think we talked about it. But the style that the Rockets play, it's going to gas them out. The intensity they play with, going to gas them out. Referees seem to start calling things a little bit differently. Last night there was a stretch in the second quarter, I think it was, where they were just calling some of the weirdest shit. Like all this weird offensive fouls, just tons of fouls, right? And so it starts to catch up with you. And then that's where the lack of offense really kicks your ass because you're hurt, you're tired, your physical brand of defense is not getting rewarded and in fact is getting penalized by the referees, and you can't shoot the damn ball to dig yourself out of it, right? Lately, the Rockets have been digging themselves out of holes. Against Minnesota, they dug themselves out of a hole. Against Miami, they dug themselves out of a hole, and then they ran out of gas at the end, And so it's hard to play like that. It's hard to win like that.
Yeah, I would say probably still a top 6 seed. I think that with the improvement of a lot of their players, I do like that Alpi is starting to find his groove on offense. For most part of the game, it seems like his touch is coming back. His minutes have ticked up a lot, though. That is something that I've noticed over the last few games because when he's not on the court, we're not a very good team right now. I think that we're probably going to end up top 6, maybe 7. I don't see us falling like out of that range just because I think even though I think we're a good team, we're not a great team. And that's perfectly fine to kind of sum up what you had said earlier about, the work that Ime Udoka has done. The Rockets are ahead of schedule. So a lot of this stuff is gravy. A lot of this stuff is gravy for them being in these discussions, being in a top 3 seed, top 2 for the most of the season, sustaining that, being a number 2 defense in the NBA up until this point in the season. A lot of it, and you look at the type of players we have, don't really fit the bill for that. Your backcourt is Fred and Jalen Green. Şengün is your center, and you're doing this. I think for the long-term macro view for the team, even though we've talked about a lot of the issues they've had, these are, in my opinion, easily fixable as when it comes to roster construction. And they haven't really maximized this roster. And this may be, in my opinion, the last season where you see, let's just figure out what we have in certain guys, because the way Rafael is drafted over these years hasn't been for fit. We've drafted a lot of best talent available at the position. The problem with that philosophy is that you get a little bit of everything, but nothing is cohesive. So you really can't have a philosophy. Like OKC has a philosophy on the type of players they want. They have a draft philosophy of guys. The Warriors have a philosophy of the type of young guys they take. They swung on Kuminga, but most of the time, Memphis has a philosophy. And the only time you really throw a philosophy is you're picking top three. So we've drafted best available for the most part. And I think once you start building a real team and you're like, this is what we do well, this is our strengths. I think with the coaching we have, some of the players we have already, the sky is the limit. But this is not something for like, oh my God, the Rockets, like, bro, we're at 13. Like, so I think that people should take solace in that. And I'm excited to see them try to take on the challenge of this coming stretch of games, because it is going to be telling about what type of team that we really have and what type of coach Ime is, because what you're naming, those teams have some really elite coaches. And I look at the coaching battles on a night-to-night basis, because that really tells you who's going to win or lose.
They also have a ton more
go ahead.
talent. They also have a ton more talent. Like someone in the space last night was saying like, hey, well, look at what Kenny Atkinson's done with Cleveland. And I'm just sitting there like, man, Cleveland has 3 All-Stars, 3 recent, not like Fred VanVleet, who was like randomly an All-Star 5 years ago. They have 3 All-Stars recently. They have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, perennial. They were a first round and second round playoff team, right? Like that you cannot compare that to what we are working with. 2 of our top 4 scorers are possibly the most inefficient guards in the league, possibly like the most, definitely among them, Jalen and Fred. And they're 2 of our top 4 scorers, right? To your point about the Rockets, how they draft for 2 things. They draft athletes with potential, and then they draft the analytics pick. Şengün, Tari, analytics picks. Athletes with potential, Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Reed Shepard. Jabari Smith was kind of an accident because they didn't think, they thought they were getting Paolo Banchero. Jabari was going to be the best available. They were going to draft him. And then Cam Whitmore, athlete with potential, but also, a guy they had an extra pick to swing on, fell out of the lottery. But that's kind of like their draft schedule. I would not be surprised if they go something like 6-9 this month, 5-10, 6-9 this month, which let's say they go 6-9. They're still going to be 27-20 overall, which is better than I would have thought they'd be. Right. Yep. So it won't be the end of the world, but I do think we're in store here for a potential 4-game losing streak kind of thing, or Rockets have lost 5 of their last 6 kind of thing. So be on the lookout for that, because that's what happens.
If they go that record, that'll be good with me, because post All-Star break they are going to pick it up a bit, as most teams do, especially with the style we play. It's like a second season for us. The guys are going to have their fresh legs and be able to have that March run that they're going to have. I think that run last year was going to happen regardless, whether Şengün was hurt or not, just because they get a break. And to your point about the style they play, it is to me one of the telling things. They play a playoff brand of basketball. It's not something that I don't think anybody can sustain. I don't think it's a coincidence that they crash out around the same time, year in and year out. But we can end it there. Happy New Year's in advance to everybody. Shout out to y'all for listening to this podcast. We expect a lot of great things from the new year. Y'all, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. Keep rocking the Chop Shop. I'm going to keep dropping that.